tell you something. We don't care.
And Addison, many people think gender pronouns are exclusive to the LGBTQ plus community, but that's a misconception, true?
Yeah. Well, everybody has pronouns. Like, you may use he and him as your pronouns, right? I use they and them as my pronouns. We all may have a certain gender pronoun too, but I think it's important for people to understand that for trans and non-binary people, we often change our pronouns to reflect who we are when we come out and be who we are.
What?
Sometimes may be good, sometimes may be shit.
A certain gender pronoun too, but I think it's important for people to understand that for trans and non-binary people, we often change our pronouns to reflect who we are when we come out and be who we are.
How do you explain the difference between
We don't care.
Let me tell you something. We don't care.
sex and gender?
I consider sex to be our biological makeup. Our chromosomes, our hormones, our genitals is a biological makeup. But our gender is more of an internal sense. So think of it like this. Sex is what's between the legs, and gender is what's between the ears, right? It's how we see ourselves on the inside.
Okay. And
Stop it. Get some help.
This debate right here, Matt Walsh provides some great common sense for these folks. Biology, not this made up fantasy land delusion. People had enough. People have absolutely had enough. We are clearing up some shit in modern society. The delusion has gone too far to the point where it has reached legislation, and there's all sorts of fuckery that we are going to unpack today. But this is not for the sensitive. If you are sensitive and you're going to come crying to me in my comment section, we don't care.
We're in a different era. Get over it. Whoa!
that's something somebody can't know. Gender is something somebody can't know just by looking at somebody.
Nope, yeah. Because everyone is going to present and express themselves in a different way. I know it's very confusing, right? Everyone's like, what is going on? But it's really, about us breaking that assumption that we can tell someone's identity, someone's story, their pronouns, even their name, just based on how they look, right?
Yeah. And so how does someone ask? How does somebody clarify that? Ethan, what's the best way? What's the most comfortable way?
I think for me, to create a safe space for people to share their pronouns, I will say, hi, my name is Ethan. I use he or they pronouns. What about you?
I think it's really important for us to recognize other people's pronouns because, again, we can't make that assumption. But for so many people who are cisgender, meaning that you do identify with the gender that you were assigned at birth, you're not transgender or not non-binary, I think a lot of people don't even question their pronouns because we already use them and it's already assumed correctly. Mm-hmm. But for so many trans and non-binary people, that isn't often assumed correctly. So we need to take the time to get to know people.
Cisgender, it says adjective that describes a person whose gender identity matches or aligns with the gender he or she was assigned at birth. Now, this would be what has been traditional for centuries, right? Mm-hmm. Why does it need a term?
If we don't use that term, then we end up saying maybe real men or normal men or regular men, right? Or we just say men, and then we say maybe transgender men, right? And the thing is that we need to realize that trans women are women, trans men are men too. And so we just want to have a term for that privilege, that assumption that your gender identity.
Do you all understand where this leads us? This delusion, this I'm a guy one day, I'm a girl, the other day I'm they, this day I'm zer, I'm whatever pronoun I want another day. What is this? This is a special type of delusion. This is why I have the Matt Walsh debate here, because he puts it in better words than I've seen in recent history on the internet, especially on YouTube.
Is going to match the one that you were assigned at birth.
All right. And then transgender, adjective, describes a person whose gender identity does not match or align with the gender they were assigned at birth. And then non-binary describes a person whose gender identity does not fit into the traditional binary of man or woman. And that term can be abbreviated to, and how do you pronounce that?
NB.
NB.
NB, yeah.
Okay. And explain that.
For transgender people, we are assigned a sex at birth. And when we grow up, you know, when there's a mismatch of how we view ourselves and how society views us, then we can choose to, you know, either medically.
All right. They used to refer to two or more people or things previously mentioned or easily identified. Now, they also has used to refer to a person of unspecified gender. So, by definition in the dictionary, well, Google definition, they, by traditional definition, is number one. Now it is definitions from Oxford Languages. So this is in Oxford now.
Transition or just socially transition or both. Not every transgender person chooses to medically transition. For me, I chose to medically transition to feel comfortable in my own skin.
Mm-hmm. And this is different from, you know, being non-binary and stuff too, because for many non-binary people, they might identify as trans because they don't identify with that gender assigned at birth.
Right.
But for a lot of non-binary people, it means that you just don't exclusively identify as a man or woman. And under that, there's a whole umbrella of gender identities where people might.
This entire discussion shits in the face of biology. It's like biology out the window, fuck it. We're just going to organize ourselves randomly every day.
Might have pronouns that change day to day. There might be people who have one set of pronouns for the rest of their life. You might have non-binary people too who are fluid with their gender identities in itself. It's very confusing, very nuanced, but I think that what you were talking about earlier with it being that maybe traditionally, for centuries, people have identified with maybe the gender that they were assigned at birth. When we look at history, and we look at cultures too around the world, we see that third, fourth, fifth genders have always been around. And then in different cultures, the idea of what gender is or a relation to our bodies is completely different than maybe here in the United States.
I have a gender pronoun chart that I got really confused about, and I'm just admitting straight up, this chart, I didn't know how to use.
All right, what the fuck is this? Co, N, E, he, she, they, Z, yo, Z, zer. It is he or she.
We don't care.
Let me tell you, we don't care.
The chart, and we don't need to go through the whole thing, but there were, like, just using co.
Not all these pronouns I think I even recognize too, which is okay, right? I think at the end of the day too, people will have different pronouns beyond he or she or even they, which, you know, I use in a singular context for myself. But as you can see, there's an ongoing evolution of language and how people can identify. If you're unsure how to he or she.
Come on, man.
All right, so this.
Or even they, which, you know, I use in a singular context.
I'm going to give them some
myself.
grace. I'm going to give them some grace because at first glance, to me, this is a guy and this is also a guy. This is he and he. All right. Later to find out that this is a guy and by birth, he's a male by gender, and this is a female transitioned to a man by gender. So when they say they, I guess it's easier to organize you guys because I would misgender you off riff. But this shit, man, come on. Even Dr. Phil was like, this shit is confusing.
But as you can see, there's an ongoing evolution of language and how people can identify. If you're unsure how to use someone's pronouns after that person has disclosed what their pronouns are, just ask, clarify. I just want to make sure that I'm using.
That's the thing, too. I know what you are. I'll call you whatever the fuck you want me to call you. Not a lot of people agree with that, but I don't care. I'm not going to get fooled because if you want me to call you they, I'm going to start thinking that you're a group of people. That's what you want to be called. That's what you want to be called. I don't care.
Using your pronouns in the correct way.
Do you know what XIE?
So you say Z.
Z? Mm-hmm. But then there is a Z right below.
Mm-hmm. There's different ways to spell and pronounce pronouns. It's complicated and nuanced, but it's important for us to understand that complexity.
My next guest has been criticized online for his views about gender identity. His reply may surprise you. That's next.
All right, we ain't doing all this. Fast forward.
Take seriously and thinks she really is a walrus. So she went on her.
We ain't got time.
Popular large retail chain. Now, Matt says gender is not a social construct, but rooted firmly in biology. True?
True, absolutely. Well, actually, just to clarify, and with all due respect, but most of what we just heard in the previous segment was total nonsense, which is why when you were pushing for definitions and that sort of thing, they were not able to provide it because it's just nonsensical.
Whoa. Large facts. Too much facts being slapped on the table right now. Let's go back to this.
So construct, but rooted firmly in biology. True?
True, absolutely. Well, actually, just to clarify, and with all due respect, but most of what we just heard in the previous segment was total nonsense, which is why when you were pushing for definitions and that sort of thing, they were not able to provide it because it's just nonsensical. Sex, well, as human beings, we have a sex, male or female, but as a biological scientific fact. Now, gender is a linguistic term. Words have gender, people don't.
You're saying that there should be no construct of gender, just sex. You're either male or female.
Right.
And someone feeling in a mental, emotional way that they don't identify with the sex that they have been biologically created as and assigned at birth based on their genitalia. If they don't feel that way, that there's no construct that describes that, experiences that.
Well, that's got nothing to do with the realities. You can feel however you want. I mean, I could sit here and say that I feel like a tomato plant, but that doesn't mean that I'm actually in those things. So your self.
Perfect.
See, this is why we do reactions. I could have literally memorized everything he said and stole the shit and reiterated it on my platform myself. But that would be thievery. And we know people that got their platforms huge by doing that. But we ain't doing that. Matt Walsh right now is spitting facts. I think I disagreed with something he said in the past, and I made a video about it. But right now, he's spitting absolute facts.
Is that?
Well, that's got nothing to do with the realities. You can feel however you want. I mean, I could sit here and say that I feel like a tomato plant, but that doesn't mean that I'm actually in those things. So your self-perception, you can have whatever self-perception you want, but you can't expect me to take part in that self-perception or to take part in this kind of charade, this theatrical production. You don't get your own pronouns, just like you don't get your own prepositions or your own adjectives. It's like if I were to tell you, my adjectives are handsome and brilliant, and whenever you're talking about me, you have to describe me as handsome and brilliant because that's how I identify. It makes no sense. You don't get your own pronouns. That's grammar. That's language.
So you think it's a delusion? Someone is self-delusional.
It absolutely is.
Yeah, I think it's delusion. It could be mental illness. It could be it's a lot of different things. With children, wow. There's also just a basic confusion that all.
All right, let me make something clear. What he said was absolute facts. You don't get to tell me what I get to call you. But there's one thing about YouTube, all right? And this is why when I did a video before, the transgender woman versus the man in the fight, and the transgender woman knocked them out, and I even referred to the transgender woman as a transgender woman, although I made the distinction to make sure that everybody understood that I understood that that's still a man. On YouTube, you can't dead name somebody. If they want to be called a certain name, they have to be called a certain name, and that is a part of the guidelines. On this debate, I don't know, man. These are muddy waters. I don't get this shit. I got flagged the fuck down by the T community because I kept it real, kept it a thou. I called it what it was. But they come after you. They come after your channel.
Kids have. Like, that's why when you hear a parent say, "Oh, my 4-year-old son came to me and said that I'm a girl now, and so that's what I'm gonna raise him as a girl." No, you're a 4-year-old. I have 4 kids. When a 4-year-old boy comes to you and says, "Oh, I'm a girl," here's a good follow-up question. What is a girl? Ask him what he means by that. What do you mean by girl? And when you ask him that, here's what he'll tell you. He will tell you what he really means is that he wants to do some of the things that girls do, like play with the dollhouse, or he likes the color pink. That's fine. Play with the dollhouse, but you're still a boy.
Yes.
And that's a question I would like to throw out to other members of the panel, actually, because just like the 4-year-old can't answer what is a girl, well, this is one of the problems with this left-wing gender ideology, is that no one who espouses it can even tell you what these words mean. It's like, what is a woman?
Well,
can you tell me what a woman is?
No, I can't. Because it's not for me to say. Womanhood looks
A woman is an adult female.
different for everybody.
What do you define a woman as?
An adult human female.
Yes.
And what is a female?
An adult human. My bad.
Well,
how
that's
do you define a
someone
female?
with female reproductive organs.
Okay.
Someone who's, here's the thing, when you're female, it goes right down to your bones, your DNA. So that's why if someone dies,
Okay.
we could dig up their bones 100 years from now. We have no idea what they believed in their head, but we can tell what sex they were because it's ingrained in every fiber of their being.
Interesting.
Perfect.
We took it to another level. To a whole nother level. Yes, we did.
So I'm trying to understand. Your definition is that a woman is someone who is female, you said, right?
Correct,
Gotcha.
is a biological female.
So what happens if we have maybe...
Man, sit your dumb ass down.
Of the
Interesting. So I'm trying to understand. Your definition is that a woman is someone who is female, you said, right?
Correct,
Gotcha.
is a biological female.
So what happens if we have maybe someone who is female, identifies as a woman, right? Cisgender woman, right? As you just explained, but maybe doesn't have the ability to reproduce. Maybe doesn't have those organs that you're talking about that are reproductive organs.
I have answered the question. You stood up here and said trans women are women.
Yes.
Tell me what you mean. What is a woman?
Womanhood is something that, just as Ethan explained, I cannot define because I am not myself.
You used the word, so what did you mean when you said trans women are women if you don't know what it means?
Right? So here's the thing. So I do not define what a woman is because I do not identify as a woman. Womanhood is something that is an umbrella term. It includes people
That
who...
describes what?
We are halfway through the debate. The title of this YouTube video is Matt Walsh Destroys 2 Trans Activists in Gender Pronoun Debate. Did I lie? Or is that actually factual and what you're seeing? Is he not destroying them in the debate?
Perfect.
People who identify as a woman.
Identify as what?
As a woman.
What is that?
Was to each their own. Each...
Fuck it. Fuck it. I'm no longer a man. I am a Saiyan. I am a Super Saiyan. My hair is blonde. You see it? I am a Super Saiyan. I identify as a Super Saiyan. You guys, you have to call me a Saiyan because that's what it is. I identify. I feel like that today. I feel strong. I'm gonna go to the gym. I'm gonna bench press the entire gym.
Woman, each man, each person is going to have a different relation with their own gender identity and define it differently.
That doesn't-
And so
I'm not
trans
asking for
women are women too.
Okay.
Man, sit your dumb ass down.
Yo, you hear the crowd clapping? This left wing crowd full of delusion.
What?
Look what Just internalize what he says, listen to what he says, and then listen to the crowd response. And like, come on, man. Come on. You must be kidding.
People who identify as a woman.
Identify as what?
As a woman.
What is that?
Was to each their own. Each woman, each man, each person is going to have a different relation with their own gender identity and define it differently.
That doesn't,
and so
I'm not
trans
asking
women are women too.
Okay.
And you want to hold on.
Say it again. Trans
You
women
want
are
to
women.
reduce.
What you
listen,
won't even tell me what the word means, though. So
you
that's
want to
the
reduce
problem.
women. You want to reduce men down to maybe just their genetics, our genitals, our chromosomes, right?
You want to reduce women down to a caricature. I'm struggling to say the word. Damn it. Sit my dumb ass down.
Man, sit your dumb ass down.
You want to appropriate women. That's what you're trying to do. A woman is just this suit that you can put on any given day that you feel you're a woman. And we're gonna make this. We're gonna legislate this. We're gonna. This is changing dictionaries. This is changing laws. We have grown-ass men fighting women under the guise of I'm a woman because I feel like it and I'm in a wig. They're sanctioning fights.
That's what you're
What
saying.
you want to do is
that's
what you want to do is appropriate women. You want to appropriate womanhood.
Okay.
And turn it into basically a costume that can be worn.
Oh,
We've
facts.
got when we.
As a
It's real
man,
funny.
you're
It's real
literally
funny. It's
saying
real
what
funny
a
when
woman
you're.
should look like.
Right.
As a man, you're literally saying this is what a woman is.
Yeah. Well,
Isn't that a little sexist?
Because I am willing to define it, but you won't.
Hang on. We've heard how Matt feels about pronouns, but my next guest says
It seemed like the crowd wanted to clap here and they held themselves back. What happened here?
You're literally saying this is what a woman is.
Yeah. Well,
Isn't that a little sexist?
Because I am willing to define it, but you won't.
Hang on. We've heard how Matt
You hear
feels
that?
about pronouns, but my next guest says those who oppose them are asking the wrong questions. What does she say are the right ones? We'll add her to the conversation when we come back. Okay, take a break.
You can laugh all you want, but this is a logical problem. You are conflating sex and gender.
There's biological sex, and then there is gender identity. Part of me wants to ask why you care so much.
Call you what?
Wait,
Avoid mistakes by.
Nope, we skipping that.
Says
Back to
the
debate.
opposition is taking the wrong approach. Joining us on stage is Dr. Susie Denbo, Associate Professor at Kent State University with a PhD in communications and expertise in gender, sex, and feminism. Now, Kent State has been recognized among the nation's most LGBTQ plus friendly universities. Now, doctors, thank you for being here.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
You've been listening to everything that we've been talking about. So, Dr. Denbo, how do you feel those who oppose using pronouns are taking the wrong approach in this conversation?
I think there's the extreme approach that you are admittedly taking, and then there's also just ordinary people that might not be comfortable with the language change, and it just is.
Why is his rational, logical, based in science approach extreme? What we're seeing now is extreme. We're being bullied by a community and forced to do something. If someone decides to go along with it, that's okay, but to force it, to mandate it, like what's going on with these jabs and just trying to force it on motherfuckers.
It's awkward, and so they're afraid of not being courteous or being accepting. So there's like these two things. There's actually combating and not being, you don't like transgender, the idea of transgender. That's different than pronouns. But then just for most people, it's just feeling a little bit awkward and unsure and not wanting to hurt or offend somebody.
Well, why is it important for educators to teach about gender identity, gender presentation, and pronouns? Why do you think that's important?
Because there is a difference.
They are teaching it in schools. And that was the big issue about this entire thing. And this is why it was a debate, because there are concerned parents that the parents are concerned that the teachers in the school are teaching them something that they don't believe in, that they don't want their child growing up in this lost delusion They're completely against it. They oppose it.
Biological sex, and a lot of times people are conflating sex and gender. So there's biological sex and then there's gender, and that's a social construct in the sense that just because you're born biologically a female doesn't mean you automatically want to vacuum, for instance, which is usually a feminine activity or conflated that way. And so it's this idea of giving children in age-appropriate ways an understanding that these things aren't set in stone. Gender identity is not tied to biology.
You say that gender's not set in stone.
It's not.
What do you mean?
I mean that's just factually incorrect saying that. So you have biology is the chromosomal makeup and reproductive organs and all of that. And so that would be sort of
The what was directed at this.
And that's just factually incorrect saying that. So you have biology is the chromosomal makeup and reproductive organs and all of that. And so that would be sort of the nature side of things. But the nurture side of things is where we see more of gender identities.
She began by saying that my view is extreme. Okay, so the view that every single person on Earth has held up until 15 seconds ago is extreme. And the view that almost everyone does right now still holds as extreme, apparently, according to her. But there is this they are conflating gender and sex because on one hand they say, well, you got your biological sex, but then your gender is whatever social construct. But then they turn around and say that trans women are women. So a man who identifies with the gender, the social construct of womanhood, actually is a woman. So if you can laugh all you want, but this is a logical problem. You are conflating sex and gender just by saying that. So that's
right here. It's abundantly clear, and they refuse to accept it. Right here. Let me
according to her,
bring this back.
There is this. They are conflating gender and sex because on one hand they say, well, you got your biological sex, but then your gender is whatever social construct. But then they turn around and say that trans women are women. So a man who identifies with the gender, the social construct of womanhood, actually is a woman. So if you can laugh all you want, but this is a logical problem. You are conflating sex and gender just by saying that. So that's the problem.
There's biological sex and then there is gender identity. Part of me wants to ask why you care so much because it's really not that big of a deal.
Oh yeah, can I answer that? I'd love to answer that question. I care about the truth. So basic truth matters. I want to live in a society where people care about the truth and we're grounded in truth.
Facts. I care about the fucking truth. I don't care to be right. I care that we all get it right and we know what's right. We know what is factually truth. Not living in our self-delusion of we're just saying what we are, what we want to be.
Big of a deal.
Oh yeah, can I answer that? I'd love to answer that question. I care about the truth. So basic truth matters. I want to live in a society where people care about the truth and we're grounded in truth. Right. I care about children, and these insane ideas about gender are being foisted on kids, and that bothers me quite a bit. I care about the women who are having their opportunities stolen from them. I care quite a bit, yeah.
You are a champion for women. I'm more interested in creating a productive space where we can try to build some kind of an acceptance around other people and exposing children to different ideas around gender identity, I don't think is a problematic thing with parents being involved.
My next guests are parents who say no way should children learn about gender pronouns at an early age. Not under their watch. They say if this is going to happen, it's the parents' job, not teachers. One pulled her kids out of school. We'll meet them after the break.
We skipping all this shit. We ain't sitting through break.
Teacher is suing the district. Tanner Cross is on administrative leave. He said he would not call a student who's transgender by their preferred pronoun.
And I will not affirm that a biological boy can be a girl and vice versa because it's against my religion, it's lying to a child, it's abuse to a child.
Cross was placed on paid leave. Now he's suing the district.
Well, you just saw a news clip about a teacher in Virginia who was suspended after opposing the school's gender policy. Now, inclusion in schools is a major topic of conversation because parents and administrators, well, they just don't always see eye to eye. My next guests are two concerned parents with kids the same age. Now, they used to be in the same school district until...
I think that's the end of the Matt Walsh, Addison Rose Vincent debate. And then now we're going to come in and we're going to listen to some concerned parents. But let's see if there's any of that debate left. Fast forward this a little bit. Oh, no, I think there's a little bit left. Yeah, there's a little bit left. We can get back into it.
But I'm fighting for change. I've been attending school board meetings for about...
Now, fuck all this. We're getting straight to the debate. We're only here for the debate. Sorry,
having
y'all.
them deal with them.
First of all, thank you for having me. And I wanted to say I honor you and your journey and where you are in life. And it has nothing to do with that. We're here about our kids. And so in school, I feel like this is a family issue. It's a parent-child issue, and it's a real issue with some kids. I think that the percentage is quite small for how many kids go through this real serious issue, and including and imposing this on the entire school or the entire class is where I have a problem.
There's no reason an 8-year-old should be taking an assignment that says, what is the gender spectrum? And I had to explain to my 8-year-old son that they're about the gender spectrum and no longer about boys and girls, about femininity, feminine clothes, that uniforms could be sexist.
Well, let's look at your 8-year-old's homework assignment. It says uniforms may be sexist. Some uniforms may strike students and parents as sexist. For example, if a uniform requires girls to wear skirts and pants are not allowed, some students and parents may object, leading to conflict with the school's administration. Not all girls want to wear skirts, and some may resent being told to wear traditionally feminine garments. Also, if a student is unsure of their place on the gender spectrum or is experimenting with different forms of gender presentation, school uniforms can present a real challenge. Now, what was the assignment?
The assignment was whether school uniforms, pro or con, should schools have uniforms? And I believe they had that assignment just so they could squeeze this in. This was an agenda and not appropriate for 8-year-old children. When I drop my child off at school, I don't expect him to be indoctrinated. Why are we doing this? Shouldn't the schools be focused on science and education and learning and reading and writing? And instead they're being taught, are you a boy? Are you a girl? And they're confusing the children.
We're going to take a break. What these parents feel about gender-neutral locker rooms.
Event aims to make respecting and educating, expanding the definition of the word they to refer to a, quote, single person whose gender identity is non-binary.
Now,
Merriam-Webster dictionary revealed it is expanding the definition of the.
Earlier in the presentation, I brought up the Oxford and the Google definitions of they. They definitely included now non-binary gender-neutral pronoun. They included that. Let's pull that back up. The traditional sense of they, used to refer to two or more people or things previously mentioned or easily identified. I would say they as a group of people. Them over there, they. Now, used to refer to a person of unspecified gender. Unspecified.
The word they to refer to a, quote, single person whose gender identity is non-binary. The annual event aims to make respecting and educating people about personal pronouns commonplace.
International Pronouns Day makes everyone more comfortable having the conversation about what pronouns are and how that is in relation to their identity.
We've been talking about gender pronouns with all of our guests today. Stacy and Matt are two concerned parents with one shared mission, and that's to recall the local school board. They say their children were too young to be introduced to gender pronouns in elementary school. And they say if that conversation is going to be had, they'll have it. They don't want the teacher doing this. They don't want this taking place in school.
Yep.
That's something that they want to do with their children at the right time.
Yep.
If they have that curiosity.
Yep.
And you have an issue with gender-neutral restrooms.
Correct. This is a war on gender. Just like how Addison mentioned before with the pumpkin that in that picture it said no gender or gender's over.
Gender's over, yeah.
Gender's over. Well, I believe in gender. And to deny that there's a difference, to say gender's over is radical stuff that should not be taught to third graders. That's dangerous. And if you extrapolate and continue on, then it leads to to gender-neutral bathrooms, which they're doing at the school district next to us. And they're doing that throughout the country. And gender-neutral bathrooms and locker rooms and that's just not safe. That is a dangerous situation to keep them combined in the same space.
Yeah. How do you feel about the gender-neutral bathrooms and locker rooms?
Yeah, well, I agree with my fellow Matt over here. Loudoun County is a famous case that the Daily Wire we helped uncover. There was a gender non-conforming boy in a dress who went into a girl's restroom and violently raped a young girl. After that happened, that's when the school district decided, oh, you know what? Now we're going to open up the restrooms and invite the boys in with the girls. Now, here's what happens. Because we hear a lot about, well, gender nonconforming people, transgender people, it makes them feel bad if they're not given access to the bathrooms they want. Well, okay, so they have their feelings. What about the feelings of the girls who are getting raped? There are many girls and many women who are speaking out and saying, we want privacy in our facilities. We don't want a man in the bathroom with us. And then what we hear from
yes, even if they're not getting raped, they want the privacy of knowing that there's not some random dude in there with them.
What we hear from this side.
I did not say that we want open bathrooms where anyone can go in.
What we hear from this side is that, well, their feelings don't matter. We're not going. Who cares? You just have to deal with it, right? Because the transgender people, the gender nonconforming people, it's their feelings that take priority.
I'm not trying to minimize your concern around it, but I don't know that it's a safety issue. You usually still have another bathroom that you can go to.
It's a security issue. My daughter would not feel safe or secure if she had to share a bathroom or a gender-neutral locker room with boys.
All right, normally on birth certificates, you have two choices, male and female. Well, not anymore. I'll explain when we come back.
This is what I'm talking about. I'm like, when it reaches legislation and now we're literally changing things, now the delusion has gone too far. Now people aren't just playing along. We're making this laws now. Like, we're making this a thing. It is in the dictionary. They has changed its definition. Now it has two definitions, multiple definitions for they.
Instead of a boy,
nigga, fuck all this shit.
Gender neutral.
That's all this shit.
They are. We just chose to acknowledge that those genitals don't indicate anything about gender.
Sparrow's
okay, maybe I should listen to this. What the fuck is
sex.
this?
They say the gender part comes later and is left up to the child.
We did not assign a sex at birth, which means
the gender's left up to the child after, so the child learns the planet for a few years and decides what they want to be.
How do you do that? How do you do that? What the hell is going on? Who's the GM? I want him going. I want him going now. How did this happen? Who was the idiot that did this?
when they were born, they had genitals and we know what they are. We just chose to acknowledge that those genitals don't indicate anything about gender.
Sparrow's parents decided to raise their baby gender neutral, meaning Sparrow will decide gender when older. Even Sparrow's birth certificate says sex unknown.
The term the media has used for this is not a baby, but a baby. Arlo, how old is the baby now?
Now it's not a baby, it's a baby. Why can't you call it a baby? Baby doesn't indicate what gender it is.
Come on, man.
A lot of this is folks wanting to be special without actually being special. I don't understand this shit.
Oh, Sparrow's actually going to be 4 in February.
Has Sparrow decided as...
Oh, a gender?
Yes.
Oh, that's a great question. Sparrow is in a point of learning and exploration with a lot of things, including gender. Language with children at 4 is very, they're figuring it out. And so currently, Sparrow uses he for everyone.
What's going on?
No, it doesn't matter what their pronouns are. And we,
Is this not regressive? He uses he for everybody. He doesn't have his own pronoun, or I shouldn't say he. See, this is confusing. I don't even know how to fucking label the kid. What's the kid's name? Insert kid's name, calls everybody he. Is this not regressive? How does this help anybody? This confuses the shit out of everybody because you are confused inside. Do you not understand that?
Children at 4 is very, they're figuring it out. And so currently Sparrow uses he for everyone. No, it doesn't matter what their pronouns are, and we mentioned it. They just call everyone he, rather they don't conjugate it correctly. They don't use him or his or anything. Just he for everything. So we joke that he is Sparrow's preferred pronoun because that's what they use for everyone. As far as for themselves, though, they're not coming consistently saying, "I would like, I want to be a boy or a girl," or "I feel like I'm non-binary." We don't have heavy, in-depth, overt communications. It's not like every morning I wake them up and say, "All right, what's your gender today?" hoping they'll finally give me an answer. So it doesn't come up like that.
Okay, you decided this was important to leave unspecified, undetermined. Why?
Because of the fact that gender is so social, and it is such a social construct. Now, we say we shouldn't interact with one another differently because of our genders. Everyone deserves the same respect and treatment. But it has been scientifically proven that children are interacted with very differently based on whether they are assumed to be a boy or a girl. Girl children are held more, boy children are given, mechanical toys more often, all of these kind of examples and anecdotes. And
We're different. Men and women are different.
I felt it was important for Sparrow to get the chance to figure themselves out without all of that pressure, intervention, and programming.
And if somebody asks you, "Do you have a child?" and you say yes, and if they say, "What did you have? What do you have?" what do you say?
When people ask, is a child a boy or a girl, oftentimes what they're trying to do is connect to you, and they're trying to connect to the child. So what I do is I give them some other bit of information about my child. Is your child a boy or a girl? They're 3.5. Is your child a boy or a girl? Well, actually, they just started preschool. I give something intimate and fun. And
when does crack, now, so the cocaine's happening, when does that crack come into play?
Special, so they know something about this child that is more relevant than what's in their pants.
So you think it would be toxic to label the child one way or the other?
Potentially, yes.
All right, America may be divided on this great gender debate, but it's important to keep the dialogue open. And that's what I started out this whole episode with, is that I wanted us to have a safe place to be able to talk about this. I want to talk about some final thoughts when we come back.
It's okay to have strict gender roles for a man.
Now, Dr. Dembo, you say it's fine if people want gender roles, just don't project them onto others.
I was saying that in the context of, a marriage or a commitment like that. It's okay to have strict gender roles for a man and a woman if you find each other, because then it's going to work out real great. That relationship will. And then you find something that's not conforming, and you find each other, and that works out great. And it's not a threat to the other person.
At the same time, too, I think that people should be allowed to have boundaries around who's in their space, too. And if you have people who are constantly putting you into a box that you do not identify with, if people are constantly seeing you in a way that you are not being seen and stuff, too, it's exhausting. It's absolutely exhausting, right? You have to imagine that. So for us, if we don't hang out with certain people who don't understand us, that's okay. But we will try to keep an open conversation going.
Yeah, I would think you wouldn't seek those people out.
Right.
I wouldn't think you'd get up every day and go find Matt Walsh and spend, spend the day with him. But I would think he would be somebody that you would want to have an ongoing dialogue with because y'all disagree. And it seems like we should just keep the dialogue going and hopefully find some middle ground.
I have a question. Arlo, you mentioned that you don't have your child discussing pronouns or figuring out their pronouns yet. And yet in school, our kids are being asked what their pronoun is. I'm confused about how that works. And then there's always this fluidity right around what pronoun you are each day. So it's constantly changing. How confusing.
I think
for
what
kids.
it is. Oh, sorry. I think what it is that I sympathize with the hurt and distress that I sense from you all. I also wouldn't want my child to learn things from their teachers at school that were topics I was uncomfortable with, or I didn't know how I'd want to talk about them. Your children are going to need to know how to navigate a world in which non-binary and transgender people exist.
This is a great conversation to have at home.
Did she answer the fucking question?
Our kids are being asked. Arlo, you mentioned that you don't have your child discussing pronouns or figuring out their pronouns yet, and yet in school. I have a question. Arlo, you mentioned that you don't have your child discussing pronouns or figuring out their pronouns yet, and yet in school, our kids are being asked what their pronoun is. I'm confused about how that works. And then there's always this fluidity right around what pronoun you are each day. So it's constantly changing. How confusing.
I think what it is. Oh, sorry. I think what it is that I sympathize with the hurt and distress that I sense from you all. I also wouldn't want my child to learn things from their teachers at school that were topics I was uncomfortable with, or I didn't know how I'd want to talk about them. Your children are going to need to know how to navigate a world in which non-binary and transgender people exist.
This is a great conversation to have at home, out of the school. This should not be part of the curriculum.
We're out of time, but I thank everyone for.
Yo, this gets very confusing.
Your thoughts and ideas, and for remaining civil about the conversation. Thank you so much, Arlo. And Dr. Denbo, thank you for being here and sharing your thoughts. If you or someone you know are looking for support or information, there are...
All right, we done here with this. These gender pronouns, people making up their own minds of what they want to be called from day to day. This is absolutely unacceptable, especially when it's hit... It hit school boards, hit legislation. Dictionary definitions have been rearranged. There has to be some sort of order. You can't appropriate women because you want to appropriate women. And the women that stand up for this, the men that stand up for this, we want to have a delusional society with no order, where it's biology's out the window. That's why I said earlier, fuck it. If you could identify with whatever you want and people have to call you whatever you want to be called, then I'm a Saiyan. I'm a Super Saiyan. I'm not a man. You have to call me that. Let's see how stupid this gets. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. We have a lot more to come. A lot more on the way. I don't even know what to say about this. I don't know how we move this forward. I don't know how we move this discussion forward. Yo, let's open the call lines. We're going to open the call lines. Anybody has an opinion on this matter? Before we wrap this up, I'm going to open the call lines. I'm going to leave the link in the chat in a second. Y'all give me a second. I'm going to set that shit up. We're going to open the call lines. Anybody that wants to call in and speak on the matter, any YouTuber, any, just any watcher, you just want to call in and give your piece on this, we're going to set up the call lines. Let's get into it.